Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we'll get started where everyone else does. As far as earliest childhood memory, what are we getting into?
Oh my gosh. Wish I had a heads up on that one. That's like gonna pull from the recesses of my brain. My earliest childhood memory would be my dad was in the Army for 25 years. So we lived close to a military base, and I remember we would go to the movies on the base all of the time, and we were going to see the movie Spirit.
With the horse?
Yeah, Stallion of the Cimarron Herd, I believe is the official title, but I could be wrong. One of my favorites to this day. But we were seeing that movie, and it obviously has stuck with me because I love it. But because it was on the base near us, they played the national anthem before every movie they played.
That's wild.
But it was my first time at the movie theater. So then any sporting event we ever went to from then on where they played the national anthem, I would look at my mom and say, "Oh my gosh, it's the Spirit song. Like, I love this song. It's from the movie Spirit." And she didn't have the heart to tell me for
That's amazing.
a decade.
So usually I have more follow-up questions about your childhood, but when did you find out that it was not the Spirit song?
So that must not have been a traumatizing realization because I have no recollection of it.
My dog's currently looking at burgers. So it wasn't traumatizing.
No.
So that's good.
Yeah, there's
That's
no
good.
standout memory of
right.
realizing that happened.
So we can go back now. So growing up on a military base, is it strictly Army? Like, was it Marine? Like, what was the branch?
My dad was in the Army
Okay.
for the 25 years we were stationed mostly in New York.
Wow.
But
what was the first realization that wasn't everyone's like childhood growing up on a base?
sorry, what do you mean by that?
So when did you start? I guess how I assume it is that you stayed on base for like an extended period of time. But now that I'm thinking about the question, you probably were allowed off base.
Yes, we were not held captive on the base. We actually, my childhood memories weren't on a base. We lived in military housing off base until I was maybe 7. And then we grew up in a house just a couple miles from the base for 13 plus years.
So he was in the military, just not, he didn't have to stay in base.
Yeah, so he was active duty for 12-ish years maybe. So then we were on base or in off-base military housing. But when he went into the reserves is when we kind of permanently moved off base because we knew we wouldn't be moving to a different.
Gotcha. Did you have to move a lot as a kid then?
Luckily, no, because my dad ended up being in the reserves. They let you stay stationed, and we were also at a base that nobody wants to be at.
Oh, really?
Yes, you are the unlucky one if you draw this base.
Okay.
And my mom was from that area, so they pretty much if you want to stay there, they'll let you stay there as long as possible because no one wants to be there.
Wait, why is it so bad?
It's absolutely freezing.
Okay.
And it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's just not an ideal place for when you have other places where you can be stationed that are more exciting. Exactly.
Yeah. So where? I mean, you told me 2 minutes ago, but where is the place again?
In upstate New York, it's called Fort Drum.
So, like, how bad of the weather are we talking?
I mean, I would play lacrosse in high school, and our games wouldn't get canceled unless it was -20.
No, that's terrible.
Yeah, so that's why living here actually hasn't been too bad. This is mild compared to where I grew up.
Wow, usually Chicago is like we get the extremes, but I feel like you win. You win that argument.
And we actually get more lake effect snow there than you do here off Lake Michigan, off of Ontario.
So when you were growing up there, were you pushed into any sports? Were you pushed into academics? What was that like?
A little bit of both for sure. My parents always joke and say, thankfully we got our dad's athleticism and our mother's brains. Otherwise we would be dumb and wouldn't be able to walk more than 2 steps without tripping over ourselves. So we had a little bit of pressure on both sides. My mom was very smart, but not athletic by any means. She said she was the backup to the backup of the backup goalie in 7th grade soccer.
Nice.
But my dad was a Division II athlete.
Okay.
He actually went to the same college I went to.
Mm-hmm.
We both played 2 sports there. So him and I definitely had a close bond over the sports we played.
So growing up, did you get to pick your sports? Did they have suggested ones for you? How did that process go?
We tried pretty much everything under the sun.
Mm-hmm. Which sounds like there wasn't a lot of sun by you, so not a lot of opportunity.
But I had 2 older siblings, so we kind of all just between us tried a little bit of everything. They really let us try anything we were interested in. We did like the dance and gymnastics route until we had to make more commitments on, like, obviously the more competitive you get and what you do, you have to cut things out. But I played basketball growing up. But then once I got older, I just stuck with volleyball, lacrosse, and soccer.
Gotcha.
So
were you ever able to quit a sport that you started playing in like mid-season? You're like, I'm kind of done with this.
No.
So I haven't found anybody that said yes yet, and I'm very interested. At some point, I'll find somebody and be like, how'd you turn out as a person?
I was going to say, I didn't know that was an option, so I'm like, that thought never crossed my mind.
Yeah, me either. Like we were just told like we just had to play sports, and I was like, oh, okay. Like this is just what I'm doing here. Was there anything that you enjoyed more specifically for sports wise, but you were like, oh, I'm better at this one? How did you decide what sports you liked?
Definitely it was always between soccer and lacrosse for me. Lacrosse is a huge sport on the East Coast. It's like the top sport that's the most competitive that everyone's playing. So there definitely was, I think, more pressure externally to play that. But my dad was my soccer coach. Soccer was his number one sport. So I think for me, I always loved soccer the most because it was what him and I did together ever since I was little, and I was always very, very good at soccer. So it was a really rewarding experience to be the best and then also get that like kind of validation back of that connection with my dad. Because he ended up being my high school varsity coach.
That's a movie.
Yeah, like it was great. So it was awesome. The only choice that was kind of difficult for me was where I grow up in New York. Volleyball and basketball are both winter seasons. Yeah. So in middle school, you're allowed to play both. They cut the seasons in half, so kids can try both. And
that's smart.
Experience it. So I had grown up playing basketball because that was my dad's other sport. He played in college. And only played volleyball in 7th and 8th grade. And then after that is when you have to make the decision when you're in high school if you want to do volleyball or basketball. And that was the only time I felt a little pressure was they wanted me to keep playing basketball, and I just really enjoyed volleyball so much more. And obviously still now enjoy volleyball. So I'm definitely glad I made that decision. But that was really the only pressure I think from them that I felt. Other than that, I was just a very competitive.
What did the pressure look like? Was the suggestions they were giving you? Did they say I would like you to do this, or how did you feel pressure?
I think at first they just assumed I would, which is very funny to me. And then I was like, well, maybe I think this half of my friends are going the volleyball round. Like this half of my friends are maybe doing basketball. And I think it helped that I liked the volleyball girls probably a little better too. But again, this is like so far in the past, but it is kind of a standout because I remember in my 8th grade English class, we were writing and I wrote a short story about a girl who felt pressure to choose between these two sports. And I was like, so that was my kind of way, I think, to work through it on my own. We were, like I said, my mom was very smart and we were always really good with like reading and writing specifically. So we wrote stories often, even like at home we would get notebooks for Christmas just to write short stories in and whatever. So that was like a nice way to work through that kind of existential crisis. But so yeah, I think it was more just, again, the assumption. And then once I kind of said something, I can't imagine there was too much backlash. Otherwise, it probably would have stuck out a little more. But maybe I'm just so resilient that I didn't notice.
As far as your growing up in a military family, would you feel like you had more or less like ability to make your own decisions? Like, was there conversation, or was it I say this and you just have to do it type of situation?
Well, not only was my dad in the Army, but when he went into the reserves, he also became a state trooper as well. So there was definitely, I think, a little bit of an authoritative expectation. But it was never like a dictatorship by any means. It was a lot of open communication, at least when we were older, of like, this is the expectation we had for ourselves growing up and what we have for ourselves now. And you can decide what you do, but just know it reflects not only on you, but your siblings and us. And that always,
What's a example that they would give you for, or like what would be the scenario in which they give you that speech?
Definitely when I was older and wanting to like go to parties, like later in high school, and I was not the type that was gonna just go. I was like, I'm just gonna ask and see what they say, because I would rather be honest about it and tell them where I'm going than try to sneak around and that just didn't seem like a good option. So I remember the first time specifically asking my parents if I was like, hey, all my friends are going, I would like to drive because I'm not going to drink. I would like to go. Like at that point I was like, I don't really have an interest in drinking, but it socially was like a little disappointing to like be left out of certain things.
Right.
So I was like, what if I like am the one to drive? Like, what do we think about that? Like just trying to kind of have an open conversation with them about it. And that's kind of what my dad said. He's like, well, if you're there, it doesn't matter really if you're drinking or not. Yeah. People are going to see you here doing these things, whether you're actually doing them or not. Right. So he's like, and if you're comfortable with that, he's like, that's fine. He's like, but you have to think like the position I'm in, if people are seeing my daughter doing things that are illegal and whatever else, he's like, that just also comes back to me a little bit. So
did you ever have to use the, hey, my dad's a state trooper?
Only ever speeding.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, definitely a different upbringing than Quinn specifically. His mom jokes about how each of her kids had police run-ins, and it's astounding to me every time because we were very much on the opposite end of that.
Well, I'll have to write those notes down and be like, hey, Mackenzie says. So when we were, we'll say high school, we had the academics, we had the sports. Was there anything you did outside just for fun? Like what was your hobbies?
I played.
What's a hobby?
I was gonna say, I did obviously my high school sports and then travel sports as well outside. I was like a chorus girly as well. So,
is that's why you like The Greatest Showman?
Yeah.
Or all those? Okay.
Yes. And Hamilton and whatever else. Yeah. Specifically, actually, my little sister is extremely talented in musical theater, which I actually almost said that earlier when you asked if there was pressure for sports. Yeah. And again, I think our parents encouraged us to do whatever and try everything. And my little sister, I remember, played in like 2 lacrosse games and was like, not for me.
They knew.
And then my parents were like, all right, let's try something else. So she actually showed horses her whole life growing up. So she did like show jumping and all kinds of other things. And then she was also very into like musical theater. She had the lead in our musical her senior year. So definitely was like in that side a little bit as well. Not obviously as much as she was, but yeah, so that was always something interesting too and fun to do.
Were you able to go on many vacations, or did your dad have to stay close to base? Like, how does that work?
We did travel a decent amount. My mom didn't fly for like 20 years though, so we just had these extremely long road trips. I remember we joke now that we would wake up in like fever dreams at like 4 a.m. to my dad just like listening to radio dance remixes of songs and just chomping on Twizzlers. So now none of us can eat Twizzlers.
Oh no!
Because we were just
Twizzlers.
locked in the car with Twizzler air as our only source of oxygen for like 27 hours.
So big question. Your mom's a smart lady, but she doesn't like going on planes. What happened?
I mean, she flies now. So I don't know what.
We're gonna have to get her on here and figure this out. No idea.
She just had. I mean, she's a relatively anxious person, so I think it just had more to do.
Yeah. So maybe a little too smart. Maybe a little too smart.
Could be, but I would never tell her that.
You can't let her know. All right, I will send her an edited version. We'll cut those little bits off. So obviously we spoke a fair about how your father affected your life. How do you think your mother did? The journaling and that stuff is great. How else do you think that she affected you?
Well, she's an incredible mom. She stayed home with us until we were in school, and even possibly some of the way through school. So I think that was a really special experience, and it definitely has shaped the way that I want to be as a mom and kind of the lifestyle I think I want to have. So that definitely was nice to like grow up with someone who's a caregiver first, because obviously now I love being around kids and I love working with kids. So it's definitely something that I think has kind of helped prepare me for later in life.
What does caregiver to you, like if you were to describe that to somebody, like what's that for you?
I guess it doesn't obviously.
Or like what did your mom best represent?
Well, for her it was definitely just being there for us. Again, kind of like the taking us to and from places, but also like giving us the opportunity to be places, because I know some kids don't have the availability to play as many sports as we did or be as well-rounded and do as many things as we did, but she was always willing to sign us up for things and cart us around to things, especially when my dad was active duty and deployed and whatever else. Like it was her and her 4 babies. And
4.
And she had all 4 of us by the time she was my age.
Wow.
So 27, 28. So yeah, it was a lot.
That's a lot going on. So my mom, I didn't find the enjoyment or see how nice it was when I was younger. But when she would make us food when we'd get home from school, it would be in the shape of like a smiley face. Or I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, the first time I could even attempt that with Adeline, like I was doing it 100%. I was like, she's gonna love this. I'm like, yeah, there's no idea. But like, was there anything like that your mom did for you?
So this is gonna be a controversial take.
Let's go.
Christmas was always fabulous for us because we didn't. I don't want to say it too loud if your kids are listening.
We're not doing Christmas. Well, not that Christmas
my
is
kids
canceled.
Aren't getting presents.
But she understands that Santa is like somebody is representing Santa the same way as like someone's in the Mickey Mouse suit.
Well, then this might not be so controversial.
Okay.
I was gonna say we never believed in Santa.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So Christmas I think was always a really special time, and that's always been my number one kind of like defendant of it.
This is going great.
People always say they kind of come at us and they're like, well, why?
Yeah.
Like it's the magic and it's whatever. And I'm like, that's fine. I was like, for me, it was magical to have those moments with my parents and be appreciative, because especially like people work so hard and it's a special time of year. So I'm like, I want to be thankful for the people who are putting in the work, who are making it special and giving us all these things. I don't want it to be some hypothetical magical figure that's getting all of the gratitude. I was always grateful because I knew my mom knew me and she knew what I liked, and I knew that, like, I don't know, you just felt very seen when you would have someone give you things that were like specifically for you.
Oh, I love that point. I was like, this is Jessica and I talked that like for weeks at a time, and just like trying to be like, this is good, this is not good, so on and so forth. But like for me, like you said, like the magic ended 4th grade, and then like from there on out, I was like there was nothing. I was like, all right, give me my candy, give me my socks, give me like the one big toy. I was always very very happy to get whatever it was. But there was definitely like my mom no longer turned on the lights to say that Santa was there. And it just seemed like it was just we're running through the paces at this point. Even though after I was told Santa wasn't real, I did wait for the Easter Bunny the next.
Didn't put those two together.
Did not put that together. All my cousins are like, really? Like you're on the stairs waiting for the Easter Bunny? Like we're still. I was the last one in the group of cousins to figure it out, and they're like, wow.
They're like, I mean, we're not gonna say anything, but someone's got to say something.
We gotta let this guy know. So yeah, no, that's very cool that your mom had the wherewithal, the thought to do that. Have you ever talked to her about why she made that decision?
Yeah, her parents, I think, did the same thing.
Oh, let's go.
So it's a whole generational thing of
I love it.
No Santa, but yeah. So I think it's also we grew up relatively religious. We were Christians. So I think my mom also really wanted Christmas to be about Jesus.
Gotcha.
So I think that was another thing for us, was that she's like, well, this isn't really what it's supposed to be about. So she's like, it's hard to tell that though to kids when it's like hyped up to be this whole great thing. So I think that was part of it. And then another reason my mom said specifically was my oldest sibling, my brother. He's high functioning, but he has autism. And my mom just said she couldn't picture a world where they could lie to him for however many years and then have him trust them in anything.
Right.
So for them, she was like, that was the easiest decision I've ever made. She's like, I could not force myself to lie to him and then all of a sudden now have to work back on all the like progress we've made. Yeah. So she's like, yep, that was she had already thought about it because she never grew up that way. But yeah, she's kind of said that was like the real stickler for her, was she just didn't want to have to then justify this whole lie, as which some people don't see it that way, but you never know when you, especially if you have a child with special needs, you can't predict. That's the biggest thing is the unpredictability. And consistency was so important to him growing up, having a schedule and having things be predictable. So I think that just wasn't realistic long term to do something like that.
So was there any time where you like snuck in a conversation like Santa's not real if you're arguing with anybody? Did you ever let that slip?
No, because that was the number one thing our parents said, was when they told us, they're like, this is this person that some people believe in. They explained it. They're like, but the most important thing is, they said, nobody else knows. You cannot say a word to a single person, not a friend, not a teacher, no one. You can't talk to anybody. So they really, really drilled that in our head. And this is actually one of my favorite stories about my brother because of how he is. He's so black and white, and his decision making, like there's no gray area for him. Like there's no room for anything. So he was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and their writing assignment at school was to write a letter to Santa and tell them what they wanted for Christmas. And he sat there and refused to write the letter.
Yes.
So the teacher kind of came back and was like, hey, Devin, like, is everything okay? Like, do you need some help getting started? And he was like, no. She's like, what's going on? He's like, I can't say, but I'm not writing this letter. I can't do it. I won't do it.
Yeah.
And she was like, why? Like, what's going on? Like, you can talk to me. He's like, I can't talk to you about it, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So she pulls him in the hallway. She's like, can you come here real quick? And she says, she gets down on his level. She's like, do you know something? And he refused to make eye contact, is like looking away. She's like, Devin, do you know something about Santa Claus? And she said his eyes got really big and looked at him, and he was like, no. And she then said, do you know Santa isn't real? And he looked at her with the most shocked expression and goes, you know too? He thought it was only our family. He thought it was these 6 of us were the only people in the whole world who knew that Santa wasn't real. And so she looked at him. She said, go back in and write a letter to your parents about what you want for Christmas. And he did the assignment right away, had no problems the rest of the day, but he would not do it. And that is just still, again, I love him so much. He's so funny, but that's one of my favorite stories about him. Yeah. So
That's fantastic. So was there anything else? It seemed your fundamentals were pretty solid. Do you feel like that was from the upbringing? How much from religion? How much from sports? Like where do you think it's coming from?
Definitely a lot of both. I think luckily, similar with the sports and academic thing, my parents weren't super similar people.
Yeah.
So I think we got to kind of see both ends of things a lot. And we kind of, at least I like to think I hopefully kind of came out in the middle of their beliefs and their habits and tendencies and hobbies and whatever else. So I definitely do think it had a lot to do with growing up as a Christian, but also not like, I hate to say, but like not like over the top, like crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas like, because I know so many people get such a bad reputation for that, and it's just not how it should be. Right. So I think that is definitely something, just growing up with really good like role models for that. My grandparents are the best people I've ever met, my mom's parents. So I think it's just, I was very fortunate in the people I was surrounded with growing up. Because obviously not everyone is given those circumstances.
Yeah.
But I know people who obviously had much worse circumstances and are still incredible people. So I would attest it to probably that, but you obviously never really know based on.
It was easier for you to come out as a better person.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
But
as far as the religious portion, you said it wasn't like to the extremes. I know a bunch of people that like they would go to the CCD or the Wednesday, whatever it was. Obviously, you can tell, but huge fan of religion. Remember a bunch about it. But how did you stay away from like the negative portions of it? Like, what was it that you were able to take away the positive portions?
So I believe I grew up in a non-denominational church.
Okay.
So I think that was helpful because it was kind of like the broad like idea of Christianity. It didn't really like hone in on any of like the really niche, borderline weird aspects of religion that some people can kind of hold on to. Also, important distinction to me, I'm not Catholic, and I know I grew up with a lot of people who were quote unquote Catholic and didn't always live out that lifestyle.
All I remember is my grandmother was a nun, or she went to the nunnery, and like you just weren't allowed to be like happy. Like you always had to be shamed for something. Like she was kicked out at some point because she was too much fun.
Yeah.
But like when people talk about Catholicism, it seems like there's going to be corporal punishments. You have sinned in some way, and like you're going to listen to us because you're bad. So I'm glad that wasn't your experience.
Yes, which I'm like, I don't know much about Catholicism because that's obviously not, I think a lot of people don't really know the difference as well. When I say I'm a Christian, everyone's always like, oh, like when
that
were
like
you
the happier
confirmed
side.
And whatever else? I'm like, I didn't do that. I'm like, that's not me. But yeah, so I think growing up in a non-denominational church helps because it was more like the basic values of obviously like trying to be Christ-like in the way you live.
Yeah.
But knowing that you never can, and that's okay because he was Jesus, because he's the only perfect person in the whole world. Like, so you can't like just, I'm trying to think of what the word is, but like you can't just like come for people whenever they make the smallest like mistake, because we're all flawed, and that's the point. Because
and that's the funny thing. Like I used to go with when I played soccer, I had a bunch of friends from different religions, and I would just like, we had sleepovers, and I'm like, can I come to your church? Like everyone like wildly different churches, like everyone's talking about different stuff. It's like, this is very interesting what you all have going on here. But like that is the interesting part, is like judging people for whatever decision they made, because in general the decision, which I really like about this podcast, is if you look back, you can generally figure out why people make the decisions they do. Either the people they were around, something traumatic happened, or just happenstance from whatever it is. But I'll judge my wife all the time just because I'm upset about the dishes. But like in general, I was just like, you made that decision for a specific reason. Like, I'm not going to fault you for it, but it seems like there's a lot of judgment being thrown around in general.
Yeah, and I just also don't understand Christians who get upset when people don't want to be Christians, but I'm like, I would get upset if someone told me not to be. So who am I to then be upset with you for making your own choice? I made my choice to believe that this is what I want to put my faith in. I was like, but who am I to tell you that you have to make that same choice? I would love if you did, and I would love to talk and have an open conversation about it. But if you don't, then that's not my place, because it is freedom of religion, and it wouldn't be religion if it was forced on you.
Well, and it's interesting because what I found out generally from those people, it's something in their past. It was a parent, or it was a pastor, or it was somebody else that they saw get shunned in front of them. They're like, oh, like this is what I have to do as well. But it's usually 5-10 years down the line. They're like, oh, maybe this tithing thing pre-taxes is not not what needs to be done. Let me rethink a couple things. Shout out, not gonna say his name.
You know who you are.
So high school, did you ever deal with any negativity from classmates, bullying? I feel like a lot of just girls in general in high school, like, just it sucks to be a girl in general in high school especially. So was there anything that you had to deal with through high school?
Just in general?
Yeah. Or were you the bully?
I definitely was not. I mean, I think as much as you would expect to be the case, again, like you said, being a girl sucks half the time, I will say, and that's a generous estimate. Middle school, I think, is always rough. Everyone's kind of, you're coming to a new school, you're finding out who you're going to stick with and who you're not. I am thankful, though, that I did play sports, because some of the girls that were problematic were on my team, but also you just have such a close bond with other people. So I had a lot of good friends, grade above me, grade below me, like not even entirely all in my grade. So that was good, but some of it was kind of your basic stuff you would expect, especially, again, being so competitive. And I'm not saying I'm like the best athlete in the world, but I mean, I won most athletic in my high school. Like, I was one of the best athletes in our area that we grew up in. So there definitely was some issues with that.
What does that look like specifically?
Just playtime, people being upset, or people's parents knowing people and having connections and whatever else. And
what does this mean? Are they writing news articles about you? What they're talking about you on AOL? What's happening?
Very specifically, there were a few girls in my school whose parents were other coaches at our school, or teachers at our school, knew the other coaches well, and there was always something to be said about.
So, like, they're saying something to you?
Not necessarily, but to the coaches about why their child should be playing over me, or should be doing whatever else, or whatever it is, winning awards. And again, I just always was like, all right, I'm just going to stick to the stats and the facts, and like, there's no way you can make an argument that that's the case. So I'm like, luckily, I think I was relatively level-headed about it, because I was like, well, I know what I'm bringing to the table. And I'm going to be confident in that. And if my coach agrees, and if I continue to show that this is what I'm worth bringing, then they're going to play me. And if not, then they'll make a different decision, and that's fine. So I kind of just was like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. There was a specific award that on my lacrosse team got given to another girl, and me and a good friend of mine were both shocked, because throughout the whole year, her and I had won every award that you could win. Like, at any tournament we went to, we would be co-MVPs, or I would get it one, she would get it the other, whatever. She had the most assists, I had the most goals, because she would always pass me, whatever. And this girl was not anywhere near where we were.
And the coach is just fed up with it. It's like, fuck it, give it to her.
And it wasn't even her. It was like a big, like, local award. In, like, out of multiple high schools. And she got nominated for our school over both of us. We were so shocked. And then later at the award ceremony, because I still got nominated for soccer, so I was still there. The mom of that girl was talking about how the guy who hands out the awards was her husband's neighbor growing up. So literally my friend and I looked at each other and just gave a little nod. We're like, all right, now we know why.
Yeah.
And like we can move on with our lives.
That's very similar to how the Australian breakdancer got into the Olympics. It was her. It's her husband. Her husband was. It was her. Like they chose the people to judge the competition, and also she was like the head of how they like funding for all of the stuff for breakdancing, because she had like a PhD in it, was like whatever it was, and she just kind of like shut down funding so nobody else could really come and like. I mean, the judges.
Honestly, thank God, because if it wasn't that, then there's really something bad going on. Yeah. At least now we know.
Yes.
That's how I felt then. It's how I feel now.
Yeah. It's
vindication
now
for knowing.
I remember there was one award that I thought I was going to get, and I was like, best attendance. I was like, come on, Mom, we got this. And like, it was the kid that I would drive to practice that got this.
Like, we're in this together.
Yeah, it's like, oh no. And that was like my only chance whatever it was on the C team of getting an award.
You should have forgot to pick him up one day, and you would have been set.
Yeah, that's what would happen. I'd like to say he was always my nemesis, but he was fantastic. Patrick McNulty, I think he was the valedictorian of our school. I was like, he earned it. He earned it. I'm sure he's a doctor somewhere. He's doing great.
So don't know that he needed that award.
Yeah.
You might have needed it.
I think so. Still not upset about it at all, I swear. So going past that, how do you decide what school you're going to after high school?
So that was a tumultuous period. Deciding between soccer and lacrosse for college was a huge decision for me. Because like I said, I always liked soccer better, and in my area that I grew up in, I was by far the best soccer player. But leaving that area, soccer is a much more popular sport.
Yeah.
So it's much more competitive. Whereas lacrosse, I was still one of the best girls, but like I said, everyone in the East Coast plays lacrosse, and everyone is very good at lacrosse. Yeah. So to me, I think I liked being more of like a standout, but then I was nervous I wouldn't be able to play as high of a level. So I had thought I was going to play lacrosse in college because I had gotten some D1 offers and things like that, and that just seemed like the best route to go, or at least had gone to like D1 camps, talked to people about things like that, or even good D2 schools. And then all this drama happened my junior or senior year of my lacrosse career, and I just didn't really love the sport anymore, and I couldn't bring myself to practice however many hours we were going to practice and play all these games and like compete on that level without having a passion for it. And I felt very like lackluster about it. So I made the decision to start pursuing soccer. Okay. And this was very late in, like I said, maybe the summer after my junior year. So for soccer, I really only visited a couple of places, and one of them was a D1 school, and they basically offered me a walk-on spot, but no scholarship, anything like that.
So walk-on means you can try out, if you're good enough, you can make the team, or what does walk-on mean?
Yes, so I went to their camp, and they had said, like, basically, you can come walk on. They're like, you'll make the team, but they're like, we won't offer you any scholarship for it. They're like, but then they're like, there is a chance you could get cut. They're like, from what we've seen, that's probably not likely. They're like, it is a chance if we get some other really good girls come in. So there was that in the back of my head. And then
that's not a real solid offer.
Yeah. Nope. But it was a college my sister went to.
Okay.
So it was a very tempting offer to go, and it was down in Virginia, and it was beautiful, and it was a very tempting school.
You usually don't hear down in Virginia a lot. I was like, okay.
Like, the frozen tundra I grew up in, 30 miles from Canada. I should have given you that as a reference point. But so that was the one offer. And then I actually looked at, again, like I said, the school my dad went to, where he played soccer. And they actually made me an offer saying that if I also wanted to play lacrosse there, I could. And I wasn't sure if I wanted that, but I really liked the idea of having that door kind of open down the road. And they were a high-level D2 school for soccer. Their lacrosse program was newer. But since I was going there for soccer, that was what was important to me.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be really cool to be a 2-sport athlete at the same college my dad was a 2-sport athlete at.
Yeah.
So, and that's where him and my mom met. So it was
Let's go.
Pretty much an easy decision after that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I went, and I did end up playing lacrosse. I didn't my first year. I just played soccer, but then I ended up playing lacrosse after that.
How were I feel like the ladies survive a lot better the first year of college. How were your survival skills as far as like cooking, getting to classes, staying on task? How was that?
I didn't cook at all that first year. I didn't cook at all in college, actually. I had a meal plan every year, and it was fabulous, and I ate my fill because we were practicing an ungodly amount of hours a day. So that wasn't an issue. I can tell you exactly how many classes I missed in all 4 years of my college that were not for a game or some type of event. It was 1 per year. I missed 4 every time. 1 was like a concert. 1 was for my best friend's senior night at like a different school, whatever else. So that also for me just wasn't really an issue. I think, again, just going back to kind of the way I was raised, my parents from the beginning, like I said, put an expectation on us, but they left it up to us to uphold that expectation. My mom kind of had the argument of like, if you want to be on your phone texting until 1 a.m, that's fine. You're only going to get 5 hours of sleep, and then you're going to be exhausted after that. She's like, it's up to you to make the decision if that's worth it.
What age was that given to you?
I mean, I didn't get a cell phone until 7th or 8th grade. And those were like little like flip phones. So around that time, like I think I never remember, my parents never took our phones like at night or anything, which obviously it's so different now with social media access and whatever else. But I think she was just like, yeah, if you want to be tired all day tomorrow, you have practice, you have this. Like that also was, I never missed any school in high school because if you don't go to practice, you can't play.
That's what my mom told me too.
Literally what my whole, so it was a very natural transition for me.
Yeah.
But also having sports in college really helps me too, because I wouldn't procrastinate because I knew I wouldn't have time later on. So I really just got everything done as soon as I could. So I definitely liked having that more strict schedule because it really made sure I kind of knocked everything out when I needed to. So it wasn't really much of a struggle transition.
Was school just like the learning, the complexity, was that harder at all, or did you have very good stepping stones on getting to the next level?
It was good. I ended with like a 3.94 GPA, so I'm like, I love school.
Because like I know some people like they have to work really really hard and they'll get like a B plus A and they're like let's go, and then some people that won't work really hard and it's like I got like an A, it was okay. Like where do you feel like you landed?
Definitely more the latter. We've actually joked about this with my siblings that my older sister always worked a lot harder but had like test anxiety, things like that, so then wouldn't succeed as much, like, or she still succeeded, obviously, still very smart, but just had to work harder for it. In high school I didn't work very hard at all, but was a very good test taker, all of those things, so I was able to do really well. And then we joke that our little sister was the perfect one because she worked really hard and things came very easy for her. So we call her baby genius. So I definitely think it came easier to me than most people, and I'm not like so naive to be like, oh, everyone should have been this way. My mom had a photographic memory.
Jesus.
So definitely I think that helps. I looked it up one time to know what the word is, because there is a word for like the memory that Alyssa and I both have, my sister. We, like when I remember studying, I would read a textbook and read the pages, and then like when I was taking the test the next day, my mom said she used to be able to recite every word on a page, and I couldn't do that. But in my head during a test, I would be like, okay, it was on this page, the quarter down after the break in the page, it was on this bottom, like what did it say? And then I would kind of be able to pull it back from like, I wish I could remember what it's called, because I've looked it up, because it's not a photographic memory, but it's like vaguely along those lines. I don't know if it's just having a good memory or whatever else, but so it was definitely, again, just easier for me studying wise.
I was finally told with ADHD, there's a thing with like music that you don't remember lyrics, and I am him. So like anytime I go to a concert or like there's any singing involved where it's like, yeah, just like sing along, I'm like, bro, I got happy birthday like most of the time,
And that's it.
that is it. But someone said there's a name for it. It's obviously forgot what it was, but I was like, I feel this makes me feel vindicated.
Yeah,
like
I feel very seen right now.
Yeah, it's like my dad, like he would always make playlists for people. It's like his CDs, and I was just like, I am sorry to disappoint you, but like I got nothing here. When did you learn you had that type of memory? That's pretty sweet.
That definitely was in college.
Okay.
Because like I said, I didn't study very much in high school and
That's fine.
Didn't try very hard.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Whatever. I was still in like
I feel like
AP
we know.
and honors
I feel like we
classes
know
and whatever,
who tried
but-
in school, and like that's fine. That happened. We know who didn't try. Some people had a great time. Like we're moving on. It's fine.
And again, my grades didn't suffer because of it.
Yeah.
Like I still was in the top whatevers of my class and honors and whatever else. But I just didn't really care to do the extra stuff. My mom actually said the perfect story to wrap that up is I got asked to be in the National like Junior Honor Society, and I didn't get in my first year because I just didn't turn the paper in.
Nailed it.
And
Wonderful.
the lady who was in charge like she was a teacher and she knew me. She came up and she was like, easiest acceptance we could have ever had. She's like, had you turned it in, because I think I went and dropped it off a few days late and was like, maybe they'll take it, like whatever.
Yeah.
And again, that's the thing. My mom was like, I could have told you to turn it in on time.
Yeah.
She's like, but I wanted you to know that if you didn't, that there were going to be repercussions for your actions. She actually taught that lesson to me very early. I was in 3rd grade and my mom's like cousin was my teacher. And we had to turn in some assignment or get it signed by our parents. And I kept forgetting to do it. And the teacher was like, okay, those of you who haven't done this yet, like if you don't turn it in tomorrow, like you get lunch detention tomorrow. And I forgot, but my teacher had called my mom because they knew each other. And she's like, hey, by the way, like Mackenzie needs to get this signed. Can you sign it for her tonight? And my mom goes, I'm not doing it unless she asks me to.
Yeah.
And she was like, what? And she said, she's like, if she does not ask me for it, she's like, I am not signing it. And that is the only detention I've ever gotten in my life. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to be a little more on top of things. But
mom with the life lessons. That's wonderful.
Very young. So I still am struggling with I have like 70 unopened text messages and like 15,000 unopened emails.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I haven't quite made that progress, but I at least have learned to be willing to accept what comes from those decisions.
No, absolutely. I once told my mom, I bet you everything, and I don't even remember what the bet was. It was probably either like some ridiculous like sports thing or just me thinking I was right on something, and then I was wrong. And then she's like, "All right, give me all your money." I'm like, "It's mom. It's a saying. It's whatever. Like, come on." And then she's like, "Give me all your money," and it was probably maybe like $42.
Nice.
And I was like,
I'm destitute.
I got I'm poor. I'm poor. So how'd you decide to pick up lacrosse after the first year?
Actually it was our soccer coach quit.
Okay.
Which was very unfortunate because he was amazing, and then our program was not as good as it was when he was there, which was a bummer. But the lacrosse coach wanted me to play both. The soccer coach had made it seem like he wouldn't say no, but he didn't like love the idea. Yeah. And obviously your first year coming in, like you want to make a good impression, whatever. So I just decided it wasn't worth it when I wasn't feeling like super passionately about it. But so then when he left, the lacrosse coach kind of hit me up again and was like, hey, like,
hey, you up?
Are you going to bring the camera? So she was like, would you like bring this up to your new coach and kind of see how they feel? And she didn't care at all. She was like, great, the more you'll be in better shape. You're like, you won't have an off season. Like you'll be all good. So she kind of gave us the go ahead. And then another girl actually, that was coming in that next year, was doing the same thing.
Cool.
She was a soccer and lacrosse player, so her and I were really close. Those like next like 2 years playing.
So would you say the girls in high school or in college were better than high school, or how did that end up for you?
It was good. Again, about the same.
Yeah.
The best percentage you could hope for. There were obviously going to be a few people that were doing things that were controversial and whatever, but I definitely felt like I had a really good group of people. You just kind of find the people that are like-minded to you, I guess, at least for the most part. And then you can kind of ride out those other things and be like, that was pretty crazy, right? You can believe that. So yeah, definitely not as bad in college. I think people are a little, hopefully more mature. And at that point, I just kind of learned like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like when you're an adult, you don't really have to be around like people that treat you poorly or who have like attitudes and whatever else. So I think I just started that mindset early of like, I can be respectful as a teammate and whatever, but I don't have to like spend time with you outside of that if I don't want to, which is great because obviously in like the working world, that's how it is. Just if you don't like someone, you can't like treat them horribly at your job, but then you don't have to like pursue a relationship outside of that.
Right.
So I feel like that was good.
How would you open up those discussions with like your friends that maybe weren't as mentally as developed in that decision making? Like, hey, maybe we don't need to hang out with them. Like, how would you approach that?
Seemed pretty obvious. Some of the things, there's a lot of people sleeping with other people's boyfriends and whatever else. And so I think we all collectively were like, hey, maybe we won't hang out with them anymore since she just hooked up with your boyfriend last weekend. So
not to bring that up again.
Yeah, but I'm like, might be best if we stray to the side.
I was thinking it was going to be drugs, but you know what? That is also not as good.
Yeah, no, not quite as bad. My one roommate actually was. I eventually ended up living with 4 girls. 2 of them were twin sisters, and I love them dearly. So one of them's in my wedding. And our other roommate was a little bit controversial, for sure. Just kind of all over the place, drugs, drinking, hooking up with
living it up,
anybody and everybody. So
there we go.
But yeah, like her own roommate's friends, her own girlfriend's roommate. It was a very convoluted situation.
That sounds like good campfire stories right
there.
It's like, hey, you had a roommate? I also had a roommate. Let me tell you about it.
And you won't believe.
So when we're finishing up with school, how are you deciding where you're going? Are you already set on what you're going to do, or what unraveled?
So I actually went to cosmetology school when I was in high school as well.
How does that work?
We had a program at our school where you went to your home school for half a day, and then you went to like the vocational school. So I like really, really wanted to be a hair and makeup artist. I was like the team hair braider for like literally in college, the whiteboard in the locker room had a list of like what order people were going in to get their hair done by me before games to make sure we had time. So I always knew I really wanted to do that. So I was really lucky to have done that earlier. So that was always a plan. I went to school for business management, so that in case I wanted to like open my own salon, I could do that and have something to fall back on if, God forbid, I didn't want to do that anymore. Which, newsflash,
good move.
Breaking news, not doing that anymore. So
I was like, I don't think you do it. We're gonna find out.
But I worked in a salon for all 4 years of college, like summers, Christmases, whatever. Obviously not during the school year. And then for 2 years after graduating, so like 6 years, I did that. And I loved it. Another environment where you're around a lot of people who don't have great attitudes and who are very petty.
I feel like there's a lot of stereotypes. And when it comes to hairdressers, I have not met one that was incorrect. I feel like it'd be hard not to. Like, that's just, you're hanging out with a bunch of women that need to get their hair cut, and they're just sitting and just chatting. I can't say it's a negative thing, but I don't see a lot of just like, oh, I'm so happy.
Yes, it was. I worked in a really like high-end salon with like 20 girls because there was
that much need.
Hair salon. There was a nail place, a massage, facial. Like it was a whole full. It was like an old Victorian house converted into this like full day spa. And there were girls there who were coming into work at 7:30 in the morning and staying until 11:30 at night, on their feet doing colors, highlights, whatever, back to back to back to back. Yeah. And I said, I'm working a 9 to 5 and I'm going home. Yeah. And I was not received very well for having that attitude. Some people didn't care. I have some good friends still, who I still talk to from there. And the owner I'm still very close with. But yeah, some of the girls just like couldn't wrap their heads around that concept of like having that boundary, because you do have to work really, really hard if you want to be successful, because you have to build up a clientele and you have to be willing to work. But I just wasn't going to make myself miserable and then not have a personal life, which it makes me really happy now. A lot of those girls now have kids and they're married and like they do have like really healthy work-life balance. Yeah. And it like makes me really happy to see it, because they're so talented. And I just can't imagine that, how I just picture they must be so much happier, because I'm like, I would be miserable all the time too if I was here for 15 hours on my feet and having like a Panera baguette for lunch. Like that's crazy.
I mean, I think it's underrated just standing on your feet. Like I feel like a lot of people in general don't move, but like if you're standing, and that's just like, that's not ideal for that long. Like I can't imagine getting done with, like, I did construction. I'd work 12, 16 hours sometimes, but like sometimes I was just like walking around. I'd have to go walk a mile there, walk a mile back, or whatever it is. But like I would be exhausted. But if you're consistently doing that, but also bending over and just like
your traps from blow drying constantly, and like it's brutal having your arms like up above your like shoulders, like at eye level at all times for like cutting hair, doing whatever else. Like it's actually very physically taxing. Well,
I know some massage therapists or chiropractors. I'm like, hey, how's your health? They're like, I gotta do less of this. This is rough. So you decided that. So then what was the next move?
So that was when I moved out here. I was doing that up until, so living in New York still, in between where I went to college and where I grew up. And I had been dating the same person since I was like 16 all the way through college, the like year and a half after college. And we had broken up, and I was finally ready to like be doing something different. I was very miserable in my relationship and very miserable at my job. And I was like, I don't want to be unhappy. Like, this isn't what should be happening. I'm like, I have the power to not be unhappy.
I've been making decisions about being happy. Time to be happy.
So I broke up with my boyfriend of like 7 years, and I told my boss I was leaving after the holidays because I didn't want to leave during the holiday season and kind of leave them high and dry. Yeah. Because I was also like assisting our owner. Okay. Like I would help her with, she would like triple book people. And since I was the newest one, I would help like while she was highlighting one person, I would rinse the other person's hair. Then she'd blow dry them while I was rinsing the other person, and like then take my own clients on top of it. So I gave her that heads up and said I was going to be moving to Illinois.
How'd you pick Illinois? No, a lot of people usually don't choose to come here. They're like, family's here, my job's here, can't get out.
Alyssa was here. Okay. She had just moved here.
Gotcha.
So she had been dating someone long distance for a few years and was going to be moving here. Similarly, she wanted to try something new, whatever. So she moved here June of 2019. Okay. And so I came out then and helped her move. I drove down to Virginia. We packed up her like Toyota Corolla and my Volkswagen Jetta, and we drove from Virginia all the way out here.
You're used to driving. You're used to long road trips.
Yeah. Conveniently, that was when I first met Quentin, was on that trip, moving Alyssa here. So
tell me more. How'd you meet him?
Alyssa was dating his roommate.
Oh, I thought you were saying Alyssa was dating Quentin.
Can you imagine?
She seems to be handling it very well.
Great points, very demure. But yeah, so she was dating his roommate. So we just went over to his apartment
Yeah.
to see his place. And Quinn was there. And this is actually Alyssa's favorite story. I'm sure she'll tell it at the wedding.
Okay.
Because I had literally just broken up with my ex like 2 weeks before.
Mm-hmm.
So not on my mind at all, like anything going on. And Quinn was in the living room doing his little crossword, as anyone who knows him, he does almost every day. Not so much anymore. But
I didn't know that, but I'm like, that's great.
Like a decade, he did the crossword every single day.
Yes.
Now he'll read on his lunch break at lunch instead
I've
of the
learned
crossword.
so much about Quinn today.
Yes. We're going to have a giant crossword at the wedding. So it's very...
That's great.
It's all symbolic and representative. But so he was doing his little crossword and he like puts it down and comes over to talk to us, which if you know me, that's what you do. If someone's there, like you go talk to them. Alyssa was like shaken to her core. She's like, he has never come up and talked to me. She's like, and I've been dating his friend for years. And she's like, what is going on? So we talk, whatever, we leave. Alyssa looks at her then boyfriend and goes, Quinn's in love with my sister. And he's like, what? And she's like, did you see that? She's like, he was chatting her up and this and that. And he's like, you're crazy, whatever. And of course, Quinn used to deny it. And now he's like, duh. Like, obviously, he's like, what did you expect?
Right.
But so then we didn't meet again until I moved here. So that was June of 2019. And I moved here February of 2020. But so I moved Alyssa here. Yeah. Went home. Was still like unhappy, but not willing to leave yet. And then Labor Day, I met up with Alyssa and her boyfriend at the time and all of their friends. And she jokingly said like the goal of the weekend was to get me to decide to move there. And that is actually what happened. I was like, fine, I'm going back to work on Monday and I'm telling my boss she has until Christmas and then I'm leaving.
That's fantastic.
And that's what happened. So shortly after the holidays, I think I made it through like January. I moved here actually on Quinn's birthday, which is very, again, just weird coincidence. Yeah. So beginning of February of 2020, I moved here.
I feel like at this part of the conversation, it would have been maybe like 10, 15 years ago, but like this just happened. Like this is 4 years ago.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah, which is crazy. So obviously that was COVID when I moved here. So
when that happened, did you have a plan to work where you're like, hey, I'm just going to see what happens in Illinois?
So I did have one job lined up. I was coaching a soccer team, like youth, like toddler, whatever, soccer. Yeah. And so I did like my interviews and everything for that. Leading up to it. So I had that commitment. And then when I moved here, I wanted to just do something else fun. So I actually worked at Studio Movie Grill as well.
Where is that sound? Is that
in Warrenville?
Is that a movie theater?
Yeah, but it's like one of the like fancy ones with like the bar and the whatever. Yeah. So I was doing like coaching soccer in like the morning and then doing that at like night.
So what would you do with the rest of your day?
I actually used to work out a lot. Believe it or not, I was actually I wanted to do a half marathon and then it got canceled because of COVID. And then I've never tried again.
Thanks, COVID.
Yeah, so I literally went to the gym. That is the best shape I've ever been in. Even being a Division II athlete, those like few months was for sure the best shape I was in because everyone else would be at work. Right. And I would just go to the gym and hang out. So yeah. But yeah.
So then when was the next time we met Quinn?
So when I almost immediately when I moved here, because we would always hang out with Alyssa's boyfriend. And then that's my favorite story is I went over there for the first time and all of them were there. Mike, Quinn, Knowles. Yeah. And then Quinn's brother, Lucas, lived with them as well. So I walk in and it's just all these guys. Yeah. And I'm looking around like, oh, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And then I remember like in my head just going like, that one. Yeah. That's the one that I like. He was wearing an all plaid shirt and then all plaid bottoms, but not the same plaid. It was just all different plaid.
I love whatever Quinn wears. I'm always a fan.
And I don't know if you've seen his glasses, which they're a little more stylish now, but everyone used to say he looks like the guy from The Lovely Bones. Because he had...
Is that a book or a movie?
Oh, yeah. It's the one where the guy like kidnaps and kills the little girl or whatever. So yes, it was a great compliment anytime anyone calls him that.
Hey, that's my guy. Stop it.
But the big wireframe glasses, like very round, whatever. Hair really long, slicked back. Yeah. And I was just like, that's the one that I would like. I'm like, I like him. So then we would just hang out a lot. We played a lot of board games, lots of things like that during COVID. That was our like quarantine bubble. It was Alyssa and me, and then the boys. Yeah. So I said Quinn specifically, we were playing Cards Against Humanity the first time we met, and I am so bad at that game. Like, I will end with like 0 to 1 cards. Like, no one ever picks my cards, but that's fine because I think my cards are hilarious, and that's all that I care about. And immediately, I am not kidding, every single time it was Quinn's turn, he picked my card. And I was like, well, that never happens. And then even when it wasn't his turn, if Alyssa was reading it, he wouldn't even know it was my card, he would like cackle at whatever my card was. And I was like, oh my God, like this guy gets it. Like, he's with it. He's with me right now. So immediately I was just very drawn to him. Yeah. So, but yeah, so then we obviously just kind of quarantined with them for then the next.
Who made the first move?
Long. Oh, me for sure.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, Quinn had only ever had one girlfriend in like high school and then never passed that point. So he's like, I probably never would have made a move. He's like, I would have liked you from afar, and that would have been enough. But yeah, I don't know. It's actually just very funny because you would think after coming out of like a very toxic and like unhappy relationship that I would be like anxious and whatever, but I just was very secure a lot of the time. Obviously not perfect.
Yeah.
But even later on, like, I told him I loved him months before he said it back to me.
Yeah.
And when I said it, I go, I know you're not ready to say this. I go, but I am comfortable saying it to you without you saying it back to me. I'm like, I don't need you to say it back. I'm like, I just would like to tell you this because that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And so he would just say thank you every time. I would be like, I love you. And he'd be like, thanks. So yeah, it was like months later that he finally then said it back. But so that was much of how our relationship went, was me just saying, this is what I'm comfortable with. Get there when you get there. Like, he told me he never wanted to get married and never wanted to even really have a girlfriend. And I was like, we'll see. I'm like, we'll just take our time. I was like, I'll check back in a few months because he like totally was like, I thought things were going great. And then I was like, so like, where's this going? And he's like, I never want to date anyone. I never want to get married. And I was like, well, that's crazy because you don't act like it. But so then I like waited another few months and then brought it up again. And he's like, oh, well, like if I knew the right person, like then I would be ready. If I knew I'd be a good husband, if I knew I'd be a good dad, then I would want those things. He's like, but not until I know. And I was like, that's fine. I'll continue to be patient. Yeah. And that's, again, basically how the whole thing went. Yeah. So still to this day, that's often the way we refer to things is I would say, thanks for like letting me force you to date me.
Yeah. Well, so whenever I describe you guys, and I've never used the word vibes so much in my life before, but from playing on some volleyball teams before, and then trying to come back to the Batavia one, and then I played with you guys, and I was just like, even if we lost, which it didn't really even happen much, the first session I played with you guys,
thanks to you,
but the vibes are just enjoyable. Like most teams in general, like if you start losing, you're going to be getting mad at each other, like you're down, and like even if we are losing and not saying a bunch, just it's still in general, like just it seems as if people are happy, and it's like this is. I would always tell Jessica, I was like, vibes are great. Like we lost the game or we won or whatever it was, but vibes were good.
You're like, we're vibing, we're living.
Yeah. And like, do you feel like you have always been that way? Do you feel like it's more with Quinn, or where do you guys get this from?
Definitely more with Quinn for sure, because that was a huge thing with my exes. I didn't realize how much easier life would be if you were with someone who has like the same outlook as you. Yeah. So Quinn and I are definitely both optimists. Mm-hmm. Every day we wake up and we're like, it's gonna be a great day. Like, let's go get it. Like, this is awesome. And even when things happen, we're like, well, can we do something about it? Yeah. No? Okay, then let's move on. Like, we're not going to sit here and like be upset about something when we have no power to change it. Yeah. Which I know is the exact problem some people have. So I know that sounds very naive. Some people are like, yeah, that's the problem. I don't have control. And then it like leads to whatever else. But to find someone who sees it the same way as you is great. Because again, my ex was not that way. He was very negative, very whatever. So it was very draining for me to be like, oh, well, like I was excited about this, but like, I guess now we're not. So that was a very easy thing with us, which I think obviously is also why we connected so quickly. Because even then, if you have like one or two people who like get upset around you, like it's easy to not be like weighed down by it, because like and then you can help other people then be that way too, because I know some people that we've played with on other teams who weren't like quite that way, but then when they play like with us who are a little more upbeat, then they're that way too. I'm like, oh nice, like you guys are also like so fun.
Whenever you guys are like, we need a sub, I'm like, hey, so and so, come, like they're very fun, come on, it'll be good, it'll be a good time.
Which that is our goal. We always jokingly say is to be the team. Whenever Jay has to text people about subbing for us, he'll be like, Shmata, and they're like, who is that? And he's like, oh, like they're the funny like whatever ones, and they're like, oh, we love them. I'm like, that's our goal, is to like,
I'll be honest, whenever we played against you guys, I was furious because you guys were always in a goddamn good mood. I was like, I just spiked the shit out of that ball and you guys are still having a good time, like you're joking with Dare, like what is happening over here? But yeah, I was a little bit more negative apparently.
Which also we are aware that we could come off the wrong way to other people, so we do try to read the vibe of the other team as well, and not like overdo it. Like we know sometimes people, I mean obviously some of the teams we've played against that aren't very good, we want to have a good time, but also we don't want to make it seem like we think we're better than people and we can like kind of half-ass our way through it. But yeah, so it's definitely a fine line, but for me, I spent so much time being so competitive in sports, in again having some of it ruined and some of the joy of it taken out. So for me, I don't want to be playing anymore if it's not fun for me. Yeah, I've done that enough, and for me, I'm like, it's just again, volleyball was my worst sport I played. Out of the 3 sports I played competitively, it was the worst one. But for me right now, where I'm at, it's the most fun for me to play. So that's what I'm going to do. Even though I would be much better at the other ones, I'm actually debating playing in a women's lacrosse league this winter, and it's going to be a very big thing because I have not played since college.
Where?
So, in
Naperville?
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually the travel team I coach for, we just built a new facility. Oh, so it'll be at our facility, which is really nice.
Damn.
So, which I'm excited. It'll be good. But yeah, so we definitely aren't unaware of that's not really the norm of how it is. But again, it's just when you have enough people that are that way, you can make it your norm, which is great. So, because that's just kind of how both of us want to live. So it's just nice to be able to bring that and hopefully bring it to other people and have other people enjoy it and not think we're a bunch of crazy weirdos.
Why are they having a good time?
Like they should be pissed.
Yeah. So as far as work goes, I'm trying to remember when you told me, but whatever it was, you're like, hey, I work for these phenomenal people, and then you just listed off a tremendous amount of things. Like how is that going and stuff like that?
I mean, amazing. I absolutely love my job. Obviously, like I said, I got to see Quinn a little bit today while I was working, and he just looks at me and goes, so this is work. I go, this is why. I was like, I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. I'm doing this because I love it. And like, it's not because I think some people get confused by why I'm doing what I'm doing, just with, again, having gone to cosmetology school, having my undergrad, getting my master's and other things like.
Wait, what did you get your master's in?
I'm getting it in education still. I just have my student teaching left, but I'm postponing that. Because I love my job. So that's the main thing that people are like confused about, is only having my student teaching left and not finishing it because I'm not willing to step away from where I'm at right now. But the way I look at it is teaching is always going to be a necessity, and we're always going to need teachers more and more as time goes on. We need them more desperately. So I just don't want to give up the situation I'm in right now when I know it's temporary. So since there is like a hard end date in the future, I would rather do this while I can and enjoy it. That was also just like a COVID miracle that happened, just getting connected with this family that I work with. So I definitely think it was meant to be, in like whatever sense you want to believe that things like that happen for. But for me, it definitely was life-changing because I, again, came here working for like $9 an hour at the movie theater and like hope I can pay rent for the first time in my life.
Right.
Like, to now being again like super secure in my job and loving my job and just having it be very rewarding. So
that's phenomenal. We'll finish up with the last two questions. You definitely have the mental health stuff down. It seems like you know what we're looking there for. But as far as health goes, what's your definition? Not necessarily the dictionary definition, but what is health to you?
I would say like health and well-being are pretty much like hand in hand for me. That obviously you can be very physically healthy, but then have other like either like not be emotionally healthy or mentally healthy. So to me, it's just finding a balance of all of those, because again, the time in my life where I was probably the most physically healthy, I wasn't emotionally or mentally probably as healthy. Whereas now I'm probably in like the worst shape I've ever been in, but I'm the happiest I've ever been. So I'm like, you just kind of have to find a balance. I don't think there really is one definition for health, and that's okay to kind of go through seasons of it.
I like that.
So, but yeah, to just have different times where you're excelling in different areas of health is fine, but finding that core balance of what works best for you, because some people will obviously always be a little more physically healthy or a little more emotionally secure and healthy. So just finding what is the most stable place for you to be.
Wonderful. And then what's something from your life that you think people listening to the podcast would be able to take away as a positive?
Maybe again, just some of that like outlook on life. And I know, again, it's naive to say that, because I know not everyone's brain works the way that mine does, but really just trying to reframe the way you think of things and try to see like what's worth in the long run really letting affect you, or just going out and trying to really be positive. And because not only for you, it makes your life easier, but also for other people. So you never know. Like, I'm the type of person, I'm not afraid to at the grocery store be like, oh, I love your outfit, or like, oh, like whatever. And just like, because I'm like, who knows, maybe that person was having a horrible day and that one little comment like might make them feel better. And if they don't respond, I feel kind of stupid, but then I'm like, okay, what did I lose? Like nothing in that. Like, it didn't cost me anything to do that. So maybe just trying to have a little bit more of an open mind and attitude on things like that, and just again having fun regardless of where you are or what the situation is, and if it calls for it. I don't know.
Love
it's not
it.
the best, but
Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.